Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping right into something absolutely vital, really for anyone navigating life today. It's leading change.
That's right. A crucial skill, whether you're, running a company or just trying to make a shift in your own personal life.
Exactly. And we're drawing from a really foundational source here, John P. Cotter's book, Leading Change. We've got the core ideas ready to unpack.
It's a classic for a reason. Widely praised by leaders like Andrew Bluestone or Kesh Karana, people who know their stuff. It stood the test of time.
For sure. So, our mission today, it's pretty straightforward. Pull out the practical, actionable stuff from Cotter's framework, things you can actually use starting now for any change, big or small.
And hopefully help you avoid some of those common pitfalls that, let's face it, trip up so many change efforts. This isn't just theory, it's about real-world application.
Okay, let's dive in. Now, when we talk about change initiatives, be honest, there's often a bit of an internal sigh, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. We've all seen projects start with fanfare and then just fizzle out. It leads to frustration, maybe even a bit of cynicism.
Yeah, that skepticism is real. But that's where Cotter comes in. He acknowledges the difficulty, the high failure rate even.
But he's not pessimistic. His core message is actually quite hopeful. He argues that most failures aren't inevitable. They happen because people make the same kinds of mistakes over and over, avoidable mistakes.
Right. So it's less about change being inherently impossible and more about how we approach it. And he points out why this is more critical than ever, with globalization, intense competition.
Exactly. The pace of change is just relentless. And historically, managers haven't really had a playbook for this kind of environment.
Which brings us to Cotter's famous 8 errors. These are the things he identified as consistently undermining change efforts.
We won't cover every single one in exhaustive detail, but we'll hit some really key ones with clear takeaways. Let's start with error #2, failing to create a sufficiently powerful guiding coalition.
Okay, the guiding coalition. This isn't just about getting the bosses okay, right? It's more than that.
Much more. Kotter stresses you need a team with real power. And power isn't just the formal title, though that helps. It's also expertise, access to information, credibility, relationships across the organization.
And leadership skills, people who can actually drive the change. So it's like assembling a change A-team, people with the clout and the know-how.
Precisely. One person, even a CEO, rarely has enough power to push through significant change alone, especially against ingrained habits or resistance. Cotter's quite critical of committees that look good on paper but lack real punch.
He tells that story about Claire, right? The HR head leading a quality improvement task force.
That's the one, a perfect illustration. She put together this group, but crucially, it lacked key line managers, the people actually running the core operations.
And the result was predictable, wasn't it? Slow progress, lots of politics, no real buy-in from the operational side. The recommendations just gathered dust.
And Cotter's takeaway is blunt. Guiding coalitions without strong line leadership never seem to achieve the power that is required. You need the people who manage the core business, actively involved and committed. Staff functions are helpful, but not sufficient.
So the actionable insight here is pretty clear then. When you're starting any change, look hard at who really needs to be on that guiding team.
Yes, think beyond the org chart. Who has the influence? Who has the critical knowledge?
Hmm.
Who has established trust?
And who has a real stake in this? Get those people involved early and genuinely. Don't just assign tasks. Build a real coalition.
Exactly. Now let's talk about another big one. Error #4, under-communicating the vision by a factor of 10 or 100 or even 1,000.
Oh boy, this one feels universal. We've all been there. Big announcement, maybe a town hall, an email, then crickets.
Right. And Cotter's point is people won't make sacrifices, won't leave their comfort zones unless they truly understand the vision, believe in its benefits, and think it's actually possible.
And getting that level of understanding requires way more communication than leaders usually think, like orders of magnitude more.
He shares an anecdote about a CEO admitting they thought they were communicating constantly, but looking back, it was woefully inadequate. Worse, inconsistent actions made them look hypocritical.
Ah, the hypocrisy point. That's huge. Communication isn't just the words, it's the actions that follow or don't follow.
Absolutely. If leaders say one thing, customer focus is paramount, but then reward something else entirely, the message is dead. It just breeds cynicism.
Totally undermines trust. And Cotter has that great rule of thumb, doesn't he? The 5-minute test.
Yes. If you can't explain the vision in 5 minutes or less and get nods of understanding and maybe even some excitement, you're probably in trouble. It forces clarity.
It's a brilliant filter. So The actionable insight. Practice articulating that vision. Make it concise, compelling, easy to grasp.
And critically, walk the talk. Ensure your actions, and the actions of other key leaders, consistently align with the vision. Seek feedback constantly. Are people getting it? Are there disconnects? Address them.
Okay, powerful coalition. Check. Clear, well-communicated vision. Check. What else can go wrong? Kotter points to error, #5. Permitting obstacles to block the new vision.
Right. So even if people buy into the vision conceptually, real-world roadblocks can just stop them in their tracks. It's disempowering.
And these obstacles can take many forms, can't they?
They can. Sometimes it's the formal structure. Maybe departments are siloed and can't collaborate effectively for the new vision. Sometimes it's skills people haven't been trained for the new way of working.
Or systems, like the performance review system still rewards the old behavior, or the IT systems just can't handle the new process.
Exactly. And then there are the human obstacles, specifically supervisors who resist the change. Kotter calls out the Frank archetype.
Well, yes, Frank. We all know a Frank, probably. The manager who says, we tried that before and it didn't work, or who just digs in their heels, maybe subtly, maybe not so subtly.
And that kind of supervisor can kill momentum within their team. They disempower anyone who wants to embrace the new vision.
So the insight here is to be vigilant. Actively look for these obstacles. Are there structural barriers, skill gaps, misaligned systems, resistant managers?
And then you have to confront them. Find ways to remove the roadblocks, redesign the system, provide the training, or yes, have those difficult conversations with the Franks. Don't let obstacles fester.
This ties nicely into the next point, doesn't it? The importance of short-term wins.
Absolutely critical. Generating early, visible successes serves multiple purposes. It provides tangible proof that the change isn't just talk, that it's actually working.
Yeah, it helps silence the cynics, right? And gives the change agents, the early adopters, some positive reinforcement for their efforts.
Exactly. It builds credibility, keeps managers and stakeholders supportive, and, crucially, builds momentum. Change is often a long haul. You need fuel along the way.
Kotter tells that story about Nelson and the inventory control project. Sounded good, but it just died on the vine.
Because there were no early wins. People lost faith, the energy dissipated. Without seeing some progress, it's hard to sustain effort and belief.
So the actionable insight is pretty direct. Don't just hope for wins, plan for them. Break the big change down into smaller, achievable steps.
And celebrate those successes. Make them visible. Show people the progress is being made. These wins are the milestones that keep the journey going.
Okay, wins are great, but the change isn't truly secure until it's part of the furniture, right? Which brings us to anchoring new approaches in the culture.
This is the final and often hardest step. Real, lasting change happens when the new ways of operating become embedded in the shared values and norms of the organization. It becomes the way we do things around here.
If it's not anchored, there's a huge risk of backsliding, isn't there? Especially if key leaders leave or attention shifts elsewhere.
Definitely. Kotter uses that aerospace example. They had success with a new product development approach. But after the champion left, things reverted. Why?
Because the underlying culture, that deep belief that our brilliant technology solves everything, was never really reconciled with the new, more customer-focused approach. The roots weren't changed.
And that's key. Kotter emphasizes that culture change usually comes last. You can't typically change the culture first and then expect behaviors to follow. It's the other way around.
So you need to show results first. Demonstrate that the new way works, that it leads to better performance.
Right. Then you consciously work to embed it. This involves a few things. Constantly talking about how the new practices led to success, making sure hiring and promotion decisions reflect the new values, maybe even changing some long-standing rituals or symbols.
It's about making the connection explicit between the new behavior and positive outcomes, and ensuring the organizational DNA starts to reflect that.
Precisely. So the insight is, don't declare victory too early. After achieving success, intentionally work to weave the new approaches into the cultural fabric. Ensure it sticks for the long term.
So those errors and key elements give us a lot to think about. Kotter also wraps this into his overall 8-step process for successful change.
He does. It starts with step 1, establishing a sense of urgency. You need people to feel the need for change.
Then step 2, creating the guiding coalition, which we talked about. Powerful team.
Step 3, developing a vision and strategy. Where are we going, and broadly, how will we get there?
Step 4, communicating the change vision, that massive communication effort we discussed.
Step 5, empowering broad-based action, removing those obstacles.
Step 6, generating short-term wins. building momentum.
Step 7, consolidating gains and producing more change. Using credibility from wins to tackle bigger things. Don't stop.
And finally, step 8, anchoring new approaches in the culture, making it stick.
And Kotter stresses these are, generally speaking, sequential. You can't really jump to step 5 if you haven't done the groundwork in steps 1 through 4. Each builds on the last.
It provides a logical roadmap. And throughout this whole process, one theme just screams out: the absolute necessity of leadership.
Yes. Kotter makes a very clear distinction between management and leadership. Management is about coping with complexity planning, budgeting, organizing, problem solving. It keeps the current system running.
While leadership is about coping with change, it's about setting direction, aligning people behind that direction, motivating and inspiring them.
And he argues, pretty strongly, that major change efforts are not 50% leadership and 50% management. They're often 70%, 80%, and even 90% leadership.
Wow, that's a heavy weighting.
It is. And he suggests that many organizations are overmanaged and underled. They might be efficient at the status quo, but they struggle massively when significant change is needed. A lack of leadership is often at the heart of those 8 errors.
So the actionable takeaway seems obvious but profound. Focus on developing leadership in yourself, in others. It's not just for the people at the very top.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating that ability to create a vision, inspire others, and navigate the challenges of change, not just manage the existing processes.
Okay, let's maybe circle back and dig a bit deeper into some of these key steps. That guiding coalition error, #2, seems so foundational.
It really is. You need the right people. Kotter identifies 4 key characteristics for this coalition. First, position power. Enough key players, especially line managers, so those left out can't easily block progress.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, expertise. Diverse perspectives and relevant knowledge, finance, marketing, operations, whatever's needed for the specific change. Third, credibility. The group needs to be seen as trustworthy and competent, so their pronouncements are taken seriously.
Okay, power, expertise, credibility. What's the fourth?
Leadership. Enough proven leaders to actually drive the process, not just manage it. And Kotter also warns about who not to include.
Oh, like who?
People with huge egos who might disrupt teamwork. And what he calls snakes. Individuals who create mistrust and undermine cohesion. Building trust within that coalition is paramount.
How do you build that trust, especially if people come from different areas or haven't worked closely before?
Historically, it often happened informally. But in today's faster world, Kotter suggests it often requires deliberate effort, like focused off-site meetings. Not just social events, but structured sessions where they tackle real problems together and also have time for candid discussion and bonding.
He mentions that Sam Johnson example, taking his team on a week-long retreat. Seems intense, but maybe necessary.
It can be. The goal is to forge a shared understanding and a commitment to a common goal, like excellence or whatever the change objective is. That shared commitment is the glue.
So actionable insight for forming that team. Consciously select for that mix of power, expertise, credibility, and leadership. Be wary of egos and disruptors. And actively invest time and effort in building trust and a shared purpose within the group.
Spot on. Now let's revisit the vision step 3. Why is having a clear vision so critical?
Well, without it, change efforts can just dissolve into a confusing mess of incompatible projects, right? People pull in different directions.
Exactly. A good vision serves 3 key functions. First, it clarifies the general direction for change, simplifying complexity. Second, it motivates people to take action in the right direction, even if the initial steps are painful.
And third,
it helps coordinate the actions of different people, even potentially thousands, in a remarkably efficient way. If everyone understands the destination, they can often figure out their part of the journey without constant directives.
Okay, so what makes a vision effective? Kotter lays out some characteristics.
He does. An effective vision is imaginable. It conveys a picture of what the future will look like. Desirable. It appeals to the long-term interests of stakeholders, employees, customers, etc. Feasible. It comprises realistic, attainable goals.
And it also needs to be focused. Clear enough to provide guidance in decision-making. Flexible. General enough to allow individual initiative and alternative responses in light of changing conditions.
And crucially, communicable. Easy to communicate, can be successfully explained within 5 minutes. That 5-minute rule again.
It keeps coming back. He contrasts this with ineffective visions, right? Like just a bunch of numbers or financial targets.
Yes, or those super long, complex planning documents nobody reads, or vague statements like, become a quality company. They don't paint a picture or inspire.
He gives examples of better ones, like the insurance company focusing on deep customer relationships, or the department aiming for specific cost and speed improvements through re-engineering. Much clearer.
Much clearer and more motivating. And creating this vision isn't usually a solo light bulb moment. It often starts with one person's draft, but it gets refined and strengthened through discussion and debate within that guiding coalition. It's an iterative process.
So the takeaway. Take the time to craft a vision that's clear, imaginable, desirable, feasible, focused, flexible, and easily communicable. Test it with that 5-minute rule and involve your guiding coalition in shaping it.
Perfect. Now, having a great vision isn't enough if nobody gets it or buys into it. That brings us back to communicating the vision effectively, step 4.
And the massive potential for undercommunication we talked about earlier, error #4.
Right. It's not just about sending out memos. Kotter emphasizes that gaining understanding and commitment requires constant, credible communication through multiple channels.
What are some common failures here besides just not doing it enough?
Well, sometimes the communication itself is poor, full of jargon, unclear, maybe delivered by people who aren't trusted. And if the sense of urgency, step 1, is low, or the guiding coalition, step 2, is weak, the communication is less likely to penetrate anyway.
It all links together, and the sheer scale of the task is daunting if it takes the coalition time to even agree on the vision.
Then communicating it effectively to hundreds or thousands of people requires significantly more time and effort. Fake repetition, multiple formats, meetings, newsletters, emails, informal conversations.
And the most powerful communication channel.
Leading by example, actions really do speak louder than words. When key leaders behave in ways that are counter to the vision, it completely undermines all the verbal communication.
Kotter has some great examples of this, doesn't he? Sally O'Rourke approving a big capital request inconsistent with the cost-cutting vision.
Or John Jones remodeling his office extravagantly while preaching frugality. Or Harold Rose getting defensive when questioned despite advocating for openness. These inconsistencies are poison.
They really are. So the actionable insight is multifaceted. Communicate the vision constantly using multiple channels, simplify the message, but most importantly, ensure your actions and the actions of other influential people are absolutely consistent with vision. Walk the talk.
And listen, encourage feedback and dialogue. Make it a two-way street to ensure understanding and address concerns.
Okay, so vision communicated, people are starting to get it, but they need to be able to act. This is empowering employees for broad-based action, step 5.
Exactly. You can't achieve major change with just the guiding coalition doing everything. You need lots of people involved feeling like they can make a difference. But often, they feel disempowered.
And steps 1 through 4, urgency, coalition, vision, communication, are basically the groundwork for this empowerment, right?
They lay the foundation. But even with that foundation, specific barriers can still prevent people from acting on the vision. Kotter highlights 4 main ones.
Okay, let's break them down. What's the first barrier?
Structures. Sometimes the formal organizational structure just gets in the way. He uses an Australian financial services example where the structure made it impossible for employees to deliver the promised customer-centric service, even though they wanted to.
So the org chart itself was the problem. What's the second barrier?
Skills. People might lack the necessary skills or training for the new way of working. The automotive parts example illustrates this. A new manufacturing approach faltered because employees weren't adequately trained.
Makes sense. Barrier number 3.
Systems. This covers things like performance management or compensation systems. If they reward the old behaviors or penalize attempts to implement the new vision, people won't act. Information systems can also be a barrier if they don't provide the necessary data.
Right. The systems need to support the vision, not fight it. And the fourth barrier?
Supervisors. We come back to Frank. Supervisors who resist the change, who don't align with the vision, or who simply discourage initiative can be a huge source of disempowerment for their teams.
It's that bottleneck again. So the actionable insight is to actively identify these barriers, structural, skill-based, systemic, or human, and deal with them.
Yes. Do we need to reorganize teams? Provide training? Change the reward system? Have frank conversations with resistant managers? Removing these barriers is key to unleashing broad action.
And when people are empowered and acting, you need to show results. Back to generating short-term wins, step 6.
We touched on this, but it's worth emphasizing again just how crucial these wins are for maintaining momentum and credibility. Kotter shares a cautionary tale of a charismatic division president who had a great vision but failed because he didn't focus on delivering concrete results early on. People lost faith.
So the wins aren't just nice to haves, they're essential. They provide evidence the change is working.
They reward the change agents, help undermine the cynics, keep bosses and stakeholders happy, build momentum, and they even help fine-tune the vision and strategies based on concrete data.
And Kotter stresses the difference between planning for wins versus just hoping they happen.
Absolutely. This requires management skill setting clear, achievable short-term goals, tracking progress, rewarding success. But one caution, the wins need to be unambiguous and real. Contrived or easily manipulated wins can backfire.
So the insight. Don't just launch the big vision. Actively plan for, target, achieve, and celebrate clear, visible, meaningful, short-term wins along the way. They are the fuel for the journey.
Precisely. But achieving those wins isn't the end game. That leads to step 7, consolidating gains and producing more change.
Right. The danger is declaring victory too soon after the first few wins. Complacency sits in.
Exactly. Kotter warned strongly against this. The credibility earned from short-term wins should be used as a springboard to tackle even bigger, more complex obstacles. You use the momentum to drive deeper change.
He also talks about how systems are so interconnected now, right? Changing one thing often requires changing many other things.
Yes, in today's world, major change is rarely a single project. It's often a series of interdependent projects. You might fix one area, but that reveals problems in another. It requires tackling more, not less, over time.
So leadership needs to maintain the overall vision, but maybe delegate the management of these interconnected projects.
That's often necessary. And leadership also plays a key role in identifying and eliminating unnecessary interdependencies. Those policies or procedures that just create roadblocks between different parts of the change effort. Streamlining is crucial.
So the action here is, don't let up after early wins. Use the momentum to tackle tougher challenges, address interconnected systems, and eliminate unnecessary friction. Keep pushing.
Keep pushing until the change is truly embedded. Which brings us back to the final step. Anchoring new approaches in the culture step 8.
Making it stick, making it the way we do things around here.
We discussed the aerospace example where the old culture eventually undermined the new practices. This happens when the new ways conflict with deeply held, often unstated, core beliefs or values.
So how do you anchor it? It's not just about saying this is the new culture, is it?
No, it's a process. Kotter outlines key elements, consistently communicating the link between the new behaviors and improved performance, showing respect for the old culture while clearly explaining why it's no longer sufficient, ensuring personnel decisions, hiring, promotion, development, support the new culture.
And making sure new leaders embody the new approach. It takes conscious effort over time.
A lot of conscious effort. And remember, it usually comes after you've demonstrated success with the new approaches. Culture is often the result of sustained action and proven results, not the precursor.
So the actionable insight is, recognize that lasting change needs cultural change. After proving the new ways work, actively reinforce them through communication, rewards, and personnel decisions until they become second nature.
Exactly. It's about making the change sustainable long after the initial push.
This whole framework really paints a picture of what's needed. Kotter also looks ahead, talking about the 21st century organization.
He does. He suggests successful future organizations will need a persistent sense of urgency, strong teamwork at the top, that guiding coalition, empowered middle managers, visionaries throughout the ranks, and effective delegation.
And underpinning all of this,
Leadership at all levels, and a commitment to lifelong learning. The pace of change demands continuous adaptation and skill development.
he uses that striking example of Fran versus Janice, doesn't he? The power of compound growth in skills.
Right. Fran grows her skills by 6% a year, Janice by only 1%. Over a career, the difference is enormous. It highlights the impact of continuous learning.
So what are the habits of these lifelong learners?
Kotter suggests things like taking calculated risks, engaging in humble self-reflection, what worked, what didn't, why, actively soliciting opinions from others, listening carefully and openly, and being receptive to new ideas.
It's a mindset shift, really, recognizing that careers aren't linear ladders anymore, but more like dynamic journeys requiring constant learning and adaptation.
Absolutely. The actionable insight here is powerful for everyone. Embrace continuous learning. Seek out new experiences. Reflect honestly. Ask for feedback. Truly listen. Stay curious. And develop your leadership potential wherever you are. These are the keys to thriving in constant change.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground, drawing heavily from Kotter's insights in leading change.
We have, from understanding the common errors that derail change.
like failing to build that powerful guiding coalition, undercommunicating the vision, or letting obstacles block the path.
To following the 8 steps. Building urgency, forming the coalition, crafting and communicating the vision, empowering action, getting those short-term wins, consolidating gains, and anchoring it all in the culture.
And emphasizing that crucial distinction between management and the vital role of leadership in driving it all.
It provides a really robust framework for thinking about and managing change, large or small.
So as we wrap up, the key takeaway is that leading change is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned and improved. Kotter gives us the tools.
He really does. The principles are clear, and the actionable insights we've discussed today can be applied in so many situations.
So here's a final thought for you, our listeners. Think about the biggest change you're facing right now, or one you want to initiate. Which of Kotter's principles, which area to avoid or step to focus on, could make the biggest difference for you?
It's a great question to reflect on, and we definitely encourage you to explore Kotter's leading change further if this has sparked your interest. There's a wealth of wisdom there.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.